He's got a very unique perspective on films. Him and I growing up kind of dabbled in movie making. I mean, obviously we never made like a feature film or did anything like that, but we kind of understand to a certain point how the sausage is made. So we do watch films a little differently than like the general audience. So I always am fascinated by his take on films. Spider-Man No Way Home did a lot that I myself thought was just impossible to pull off in live action. Yo YouTube, what's going on? Comic John here with not a trailer reaction, but a movie review from my best friend who lives up in Philadelphia. We don't really get to hang out we don't get to hang out, but we also just don't have time. We both have two kids. We don't have a lot of time to get on here and do the video and then go and edit it. So he wrote me his review and I'm just gonna read it to you. I will say this film was a lot of fun. I feel like the recent Marvel films, including the other Sony collaborations, have been very weak in the story front. I kind of agree with that. Shang-Chi and Eternals was pretty awesome. This movie also doesn't have a very strong plot, but what it does have is fun. It reminded me of those 80s, 90s movies where the premise was what it was and we all just accepted it. Movies like Freaky Friday, Weird Science, One of the Guys, Ladybugs, Mrs. Doubtfire. We let the explanation go for a bit and forgive the setup because we just want to see the story play out. Now, it was hard to avoid knowing the other Spider-Men were going to show up. It was also very hard not to have a Simpsons did it moment, knowing that Into the Spider-Verse did it first. But for live-action superhero movies, we know that just getting this to happen the way it did is extremely difficult. That's what I'm saying. We always wish that Christopher Reeves and Michael Keaton could be in the same room in the same movie. Mind blown. I guess the CW was best at this, having Christopher Reeves in Smallville all the way up to Crisis on Infinite Earths. As great as it was, it felt more like a handshake at a comic book convention than worlds we knew actually colliding. This is where No Way Home did a much better job. They gave us some time to breathe and let the actors interact. The movie as a whole was a bit boring. I feel like the outrage was a bit produced just for the plot. Even the panic in the first scene didn't make much sense. The people around MJ were not acting like real people. I think all Spider-Man movies have their flaws, especially when it comes to portraying Peter Parker. That was my biggest problem with No Way Home. The first act, I just kept butting up against the tone. I was like, is this silly? I mean, what is this silly or is this serious? With the mask on, it's a bit easier. Right. Thwip, thwip, joke, joke, flippity, flip, swing away. But showing the struggles of Peter Parker is always a burden on the actor because they have to mope around for 2 hours. That was always my biggest problem with the Spider-Man character. Just the amount of guilt that he just carries around. I mean, not even Captain America carries around that much guilt. That can be a bit exhausting. Toby makes his Toby face, Andrew mumbles, and maybe this is just because I'm old. Tom's Peter Parker scenes just plain annoy me because they seem to always not talk like kids talk, but how someone like me thinks they talk, right? 18-year-olds don't talk to each other that way. The scene where MJ, hey, I am here. Like, it's a little above her age grade there. And I get it's for the tween crowd, but I feel like some of the dialogue could be better. The scene with the FaceTime call, Happy in the sleep apnea mask, was actually good dialogue. I enjoyed that scene and the humor in it, but whenever the three kids get together, it's all just too quippy. The overall premise of the spell didn't make much sense either. I don't get the sling ring and what it can and can't do. It can sever hands or let in a blizzard. Okay, fine. Would have been nice to sever a certain glove or gauntlet, but now it's some sort of wish-granting homing device. In every other comic or cartoon, there have been locator spells that come at a cost, or the characters have to go to someone for a mystical relic that will help. Here, they just sort of concentrate and it happens. And I get that Ned is the new Rey Skywalker. He's basically saying that Ned, little overpowered out of nowhere. I get that Ned is the new Rey Skywalker, but effort is effort, and without the work and the struggle from the characters like Strange struggling with his hands to sling ring, I think it's unfair, and it makes the Doctor Strange montage look like he was just a baby during the training. The Spider-Man appear scene just felt odd to me. I agree. It felt like they were supposed to come a different way, and they had to rewrite because of the release of the movies. I'm not sure. I got that it was probably tacked on, right, yeah, like this, yeah. But it would have been cool if they had appeared in the middle of a fight scene. Also, why did they stop looking for two Peters? It seemed like they knew the script or something. This probably would have been an amazing time to pop in Miles Morales too. I mean, why not? I know Electro references him later, but it might have been cool to cement that there are other universes in the MCU that even the audience hasn't seen. Right. I feel like they're saving Miles. They're happy with him as animated, and they're saving him for something else. Anyway, it was great to see a grown-up, more mature Tobey, similar to seeing a powerless family man, Tom Welling in Crisis. And I'm glad that Andrew got his forgiveness scene. Honestly, I think it was the best he ever played the character. I like how they covered all the Kevin Smith criticisms of Tobey back when he used to criticize things, right? I know, Kevin Smith's thing is now, he only really talks about things that he loves, which is fine. I mean, that's kind of what I love about Kevin Smith. You know he's not going to talk shit. He's just going to tell you how much he loved something. I also like the overall plot of doing what's best for the villains, similar to the Justice League Unlimited Flash and Substance episode, where Batman observes Flash taking a caring approach to his rogues gallery and shows why he is the best hero of them all. I think Spider-Man and Flash have that in common, along with being more powerful than they realize. I think referencing Flashpoint was a little on the nose, since this movie ends almost exactly like Flashpoint. Sort of, yeah. Not really. Did in the CW, I don't know. And as it will probably reflect in the DC movie. I think Marvel should be pushing DC movies. But see, I don't think that Flashpoint thing was a jab. I think it was a wink, like a pay. You know, we're talking about it. We're talking about the Flashpoint movie that's coming out because the book that Flash wrote in Spider-Man No Way Home was called Flashpoint. I don't think that was an insult. I mean, I think that was free advertising for DC. He said, I think Marvel should be pushing DC movies to be better instead of flaunting their success. So yeah, see, I think it was just kind of a wink. The villains, especially Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina, were absolute perfection. I even had my wife go back and watch the Willem Green Goblin Schmeagol talking to himself in the mirror scene just to show how much effort he originally put into the character. I also love that they gave the Green Goblin his comic costume and just let Willem use his face. I bawled when Aunt May died, and I feel like it was a gut-wrenching scene. Tom Holland's performance in that scene, so realistic. He was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Look at me. May, can you please just look at me? Oof. Like, just not believing that she's dead. But I also liked how the Spider-Man acted sort of like it had to happen for Tom Spider-Man to reach his full potential. That whole chunk of the movie, I was numb. Yeah, that was rough. Oh, and I think my favorite detail was the Spidey sense when Peter was in the astral form, like the wavy lines like in the comics. That was really, really cool and a perfect touch. The Doctor Strange after credit scene was insanely awesome. The Venom one made little sense just based on the rules of the spell. I'm guessing they were leaning into the symbiotic network hive memory thing that ranges across the multiverse, so okay. But none of that has been established, and then Venom sticking behind, does the spell work or not? Well, it was established. If you watch the post-credit scene in Venom Let There Be Carnage, Venom says to him, 80 billion light years of hive knowledge would explode your tiny little brain. Remember, like, Venom was about to show him how much he knows, and then, the spell came in and sucked him into the MCU. It was just confusing. I would rather have just had a funny scene with Topher Grace and Tom Hardy at a bar and nothing comes of it. That would have been great. That would have at least been funny, because that scene, other than leaving the symbiote behind, which I don't know how that works, but I'm totally fine with it. Anyway, that was my buddy Agnew's review. I'm going to call this movie review Vortex, and up next, we're going to do Zack Snyder's Justice League, so make sure you tune in for that. Keep an eye out. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't tell your grandparents. I'll see you next week. I gotta go!